Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Today's episode, as always, is brought to you by Nova Insurance, where we love people through insurance, whether it is your business, real estate portfolio, home, auto, or life. We work as independent risk advisors to find the best coverage options for your unique needs. My guest today is a certified residential appraiser and is co-owner of the Martin Appraisal Group. She's been an appraiser for 5 years and performs most of her work in the central and eastern part of the state. Born and raised and residing in Winchester, Kentucky, she received her degree from Georgetown College and the Martin School of Public Policy at UK. She is married to her husband, Michael, who is the other co-owner of the business, and together they have a beautiful baby girl named Mary Katherine, along with her two dachshunds, Darby and Murphy. It's my honor to welcome Alyshia Martin today to the Keys to the Commonwealth studio. Alyshia, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so definitely a topic we have not gone down or discussed before, but is always a part of every real estate investor's aspect where we're talking about trying to figure out what a property would appraise for, what the value is. Obviously plays a big part of that. So before we get into kind of some of those nuts and bolts, kind of as we start every episode, jump back in the DeLorean and tell me, how'd you get into the appraisal business? I'm sure you didn't start out that way. How'd you get into the appraisal business?
Yeah, I was in actually politics before I decided to jump over into the real estate appraising. I entered politics at a really interesting time, as you can imagine. Things became just a hot, just kind of a.
I feel like social media has just dumped with the way we can get news, et cetera, that social media has just dumped kerosene on what politics already was to begin with.
It wasn't a friendly time. I was a field representative for a congressman, so going out into the field by myself, and I didn't really love it, and it took me a little bit to figure that out.
Sure.
But I was looking then for career change. What can I do? Really, I was just looking for the lifestyle I wanted, which was to be a mom someday, what I could do to be able to have the most time with Mary Katherine.
Yep.
And my grandmother is an appraiser. She still does a little bit of work.
Okay.
And then I have people who are realtors in my family. So I kind of saw the difference in their lifestyles. The realtors in my family were showing houses after work and on weekends. And then, my grandmother could really tailor her schedule to fit what she wanted to do and where she wanted to be. So I kind of chose that path.
The obvious path going from politics to real estate appraising.
Yeah, we were joking. I entered and people were not the most friendly in politics. And then I changed to appraising. Now I go to people's houses and they love me. I don't know. They're nice at first.
And if I thought about appraising for like a hot minute back in the day, and then quickly realized there's a lot of challenges to getting into it with the aspect of having to have so many, what are their hours? What do they call those? The apprenticeship type hours, right? And type of things. So I guess that having a family in it is what kind of helped. And that's what I saw, is like I didn't have any family in it that was close by that I could really do that with. Yeah, right.
It was interesting because, I thought my grandmother would be my trainer.
Oh, she wasn't.
Oh, no. She said, I want to maintain our cordial family relationship. She said, I don't want to mix, the personal and professional. Sure. So she told me I needed to find a new trainer. So I found a gentleman in Winchester and I begged him pretty much, just, for his time.
Your grandmother's probably behind your back calling him, be like, you better.
Yeah. Well, it probably was best for us both that we didn't do the training together, but I was so thankful that he took me on. At that point, you had to have 2 years under a trainer. Now it's changed just to 1 year.
Oh,
so
really?
That's helpful.
Oh, yeah.
But it is a barrier to entry in that field because you're right. If you don't have a family member, if you don't know who to contact, and a lot of times appraisers aren't taking on trainees.
They don't want to share business maybe. Or
it is. A lot of them that I would talk to say, I'm training my competition. I can't do that. So, I understand that, but I was really thankful for the opportunity. And I'm going to remember that, as I go forward and have the opportunity. I think you have to be a certified residential appraiser for 3 years. So I'm right at the mark where I could think about implementing some kind of training program.
Yeah, probably a few years before Mary Katherine can do
that. Right. Oh, yeah.
If she wanted to, no. What was like one more difficult parts then I think that you probably didn't see or think about going into starting your own business? That's sometimes like I started my own business and you're like, I was like, it's just gonna be me. But I was like, holy crap, there's so much involved that I'm so glad I kind of jumped in with sometimes blind faith on running my own business type of thing that maybe I would have gotten cold feet if I had known everything I know now. But what are some of those aspects?
There's so much. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And
that's exactly it.
I knew, appraising is nice. There's not a ton of overhead. So I knew that I would probably do my own thing, wouldn't stay under my trainer. Yeah. And he gave me his blessing to do that and was very helpful in, navigating and starting my own. But it was funny because he and my grandmother and some people told me, you need to plan because you won't get your first spots on an appraisal roster for 3 to 6 months. So you really need to think about that and plan for that financially. But, for me, I really laid some groundwork before I started the business, going to the Chamber of Commerce meetings, in Winchester, Lexington, doing the leadership programs in Lexington. I did the Central Kentucky.
Yeah. Was that worth it? I thought about it.
I loved it. Okay. And it really helped me know now that I go into those counties and do appraisals, I know so much more about the area.
Don't have time. So you did that while you were doing it.
I did.
Awesome.
While I was a trainee, I did that.
That's brilliant.
What was so nice is I got my license on a Wednesday. I did all the business setup.
Sure.
Before I got my license on a Wednesday, had my first order on a Monday. So they had told me 3 to 6 months. And honestly, we hit the ground running, which was such a blessing. But you're awesome. Right. It was like we honestly didn't even
Now, were you and your husband doing it at the same time?
So actually, he was at University of Kentucky. He was working with the football team in ticket sales.
Okay.
And like you said, I just got so busy. I was a one-man band doing everything. Right. And I told him, it's probably beneficial for you to just come work with me.
Yeah.
And he did his training not under me. He actually did it under my grandmother. She wouldn't train me, but she did him. I don't know. But yeah. I don't know. He said she was pretty hard. So, but anyways, so he ended up coming and working with me, worked with her. And then eventually I brought him on board Martin Appraisal Group. So he works with me now, but I couldn't do it without him. Of course, we started in November 2019, and then 2020 hit, and we had just started the business. I'm praying, please don't close the business. Yeah. It was the opposite.
It was the opposite,
yeah, which was just
so I opened my doors to my own agency in April 2019, and so those that started right before it, maybe it was like a gold moment there, but it ended up being pretty good at the end for both the types of business we're in, for sure.
Thankfully.
All right, so moving on to the actual aspect of real estate appraising then. I mean, nuts and bolts, obviously, as real estate investors, a lot of times that can be a big pain point, or it could be a big asset aspect of everything. So when investors are looking at flip potential or cash out refis, what are the factors that they should be looking for as far as the equity increase? The standard ones we probably know versus maybe some of the ones that we miss or don't think about type of thing, from your experience.
Yeah, and I think it's most important for real estate investors to really know the market, know where you're going into, look at recent sales to make sure that you're updating to the level of the comps.
Right.
That's what I see most. I think
be realistic.
Absolutely, going in and putting all new cabinets in when your comps are just painted cabinets. You know what I mean? I see that a lot.
So almost overdoing it,
right?
Right. So overdoing it doesn't always mean an increase. Is what you're saying,
right. And really look at the sales around you to know what updates, to what level they've been updated or flipped. I think I see that most, and I think kitchen and bathrooms are always key. There's a whole section on the appraisal that asks you whether you've updated the kitchen and bathrooms and to what level.
So the aspect of it being a rental, does that actually play any merit in that at all? Versus if it's going to be sold there's one aspect of something's being updated for a flip, what you might put into it might be slightly different than if you're putting money into it for a hold and actually uses a long-term rental side of things, right? Some of the material might use might be a little bit different. Maybe we're doing backsplash and not doing backsplash on a rental of thing.
Right.
Different things like that. I mean, so is that play obviously somewhat of a difference there based upon the fact that it's going to be rental versus a flip, or does it more or less the materials play a bigger factor there?
I think I know what you're asking, but it really, I mean, a lot of times
I don't know what I don't know. So,
well, I want to make sure
sense.
I answer what you need. But a lot of times, I mean, you're flipping in a market where other ones are being flipped to rent, right?
Sure,
so, like
exactly.
a lot of those materials are going to be the same.
So, almost like look at ones that probably are rentals itself if you can, rather than ones that were, sold. If you're going to be holding versus.
Right.
If you're going to be flipping it, maybe look at the markets where those have been sold to homeowners, everything.
Right. Okay. And you're right. There is a difference in the level of finish on those for sure, and understandably. But when I'm looking at comps, I look for the ones. That's why we look for comps in such close proximity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that market's going to be similar.
Oh yeah.
Right.
What about the eye test, so to speak? Does that kind of play into it at all? Like if I've got for example, if I'm going to hold the property as a rental, and I'm like, I don't really care, and renter probably doesn't really care about how nice landscaping is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it worth still probably doing some of that in that sense to kind of help yourself out there, I guess, in that sense?
Landscaping is tough, and again, a lot of those markets, landscaping isn't something that your comps are really going to focus on. So it's really
that might just
about
drive the price of overpriced somebody coming in.
Right. I mean, again, and I know it's annoying to keep coming back, but look at what's sold around you, because if they've got a nice landscape package, maybe that's something that you do. If they don't, that's not something I would worry about, because we are looking for the sales around you.
You don't want to be again, you don't always want to be the nicest street.
You don't want to be, that's not, that's a disadvantage.
You'd rather be the worst one and bring it up to even par with the other ones.
Right.
Okay. I get it. One of the questions I always found interesting, and maybe you could explain it, is, a lot of times, like when we've purchased a house and we're updating it to then refi it, kind of always asking what we paid for the property type of thing. And I never quite understood why that was asked versus just I know I would get, what do we add to the value of what we've done, what updates we've done, et cetera. But what is the purchase price kind of? Is that just for records purposes?
Right. It's more of a reporting. The underwriter wants to know what you purchased it for. And then it's my job, your job, to kind of let them know what updates you've done to justify the new value. So it's really just more of a reporting thing. They want to know the sales history in the past 3 years. So it's a reporting thing.
Gotcha. Okay. What time, as far as when we're kind of looking at these markets, I mean, what do you see the biggest issue for real estate investors like us to miss? I mean, obviously, where's some of those finer details outside of just maybe,
I was thinking about this. I think what I see is investors overestimating the value of below grade finish.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, expand on that a little bit.
So for appraisers on our reports, we're breaking down above and below grade GLA, mainly because the market just accepts
GLAs and
gross living area.
Okay.
Gross living area. So for appraisers, we break that down. There's above grade living area, and then there's below grade
kind of like the
area.
Commercial side. We have like A, B, C, and D kind of buildings, residents, et cetera. Okay.
Right. And so for us, we look at the market as a whole, but typically, especially in the markets I work in, basements are just considered and accepted in the markets differently than above grade square footage. Oftentimes, their finishes can be different.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not the case, but I'm just speaking generally here.
Almost like a pool doesn't really add as much type of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't get my dad started on that. He's a realtor, and he put a pool in his own home. He just always talks about how appraisers just don't see the value of the pool.
Well, I mean, in COVID and everybody's staying at home, it gave a bunch of value right then, right?
Right. And, I'm kind of sidetrack conversation, but I saw during COVID the outdoor living space become more valuable. the pools, the screened-in patios, the covered patios, I just thought that was interesting, and I kind of saw it in real time changing, before my eyes. So anyways, back to the basements. I see a lot of times, and I hear a lot of times, we've got 3,200 finished square feet, but they don't break that down into what's on the main level, what's below grade, what's in the basement. Okay. So I think sometimes you can overestimate the value of your finished square feet because investors don't break that down like an appraiser would.
Okay, yeah, some similarities there because most people don't know with the insurance, we don't take the square footage we have listed, is that we subtract the basement out of that.
Okay.
So it's not factored in. There's factored in as far as foundation for the basement, and we factor in a little bit of the overall as far as the if it's finished versus not finished kind of a thing, as far as some of the replacement costs. But it's not factored in on a price per square foot type of thing, or what's the rate per square foot kind of a thing.
Right.
In that sense. That's interesting. I mean, as far as what we're looking at, obviously looking at sales around us, is there type time frames that you all are typically stay in, or definitely recommend in that sense? Obviously, we are sitting on the precipice of much of a correction in the market kind of a thing. So we could talk to that point a little bit if we wanted to as well. But I mean, what are some of those rules that we should be kind of that you are looking at that we probably need to take a look at as well, how we're factoring it?
Yeah, so a lot of our clients and lenders allow us to have comparable sales back 12 months, so back a year. However, I always start out looking in the last 3 months, because that's really indicative of what's going on right now. Yeah. And it could be misleading to go back 12 months. Think about right now, using comps from 12 months ago. It's not the same market. So I always start with the 3 month in my search when I'm looking for comps. And I think there was a question at one of the forums where we met, and a realtor asked, how can we talk with clients when we're listing our house? And I thought it was interesting. It does not serve them well to go back 12 months. That's, because you're going to be sitting, you're going to it's going to be sitting there longer. Yeah. You've really got to look at the last 3 months and see what's gone on around you. Right. And so, we right now, where we can use 12 months and 6 months, we have a decent comp pool, but I see that as an issue in the future. Right now, where we're having fewer sales, our comp pool in the future is it's going to be slim, and that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, that would. And then I know one of the questions I asked at this was the question more or less on area around it. Obviously, Lexington is much more dense population, so recent sales are going to be much more applicable in that immediate area versus Winchester, Jessamine County, somewhere that is a bit more rural. There's less to look at as far as recent sales and so forth. Kind of talk about some of those differences. Maybe if it's a rental property in Lexington versus rental property that we're trying to think about appraising, or what it could price for, like in Winchester or something. Yeah.
So we try to, especially here in Lexington, it's easier to stay within. A lot of our lenders like 12 months, 1 mile as a criteria when we're looking for comps. In Lexington, that's really easy to do. Really, we go, a lot closer than 1 mile. Yeah. But when I get into Winchester, I do a lot of Mount Sterling. That's not, we can't find anything within a mile, and the market is not just the mile, there. It's a rural location. Right. It's a larger market area. So anyways, we have to go 5. In my rural areas, I go to Estill County. I'm in Rowan County. Right. You're looking sometimes at the whole town. And you're just trying to make it make sense.
That's where you're probably expanding to more 12-month scenarios, or absolutely
to. Right. You're forced to to find comps that make sense and really help you determine that value. Yeah. And of course, I know we have a sales comparison grid, so there's adjustments. You can make adjustments for the time differences in the market. You can adjust for the location. Mm-hmm. So that's where those will factor in if you do have to go outside those parameters.
One of the things we were talking about was more or less, maybe as investors, do you see where we missed some of the things that are not factoring in some of the rules we were talking about at that Q&A with Fannie Mae? The mortgage loans themselves have some rules that you all have to kind of abide by. Is there ones that are kind of often missed for people that have updated or flipped properties that have kind of caused a headache on sales transactions going through, that they've kind of had to go back, fix some things, change some things or something like that? Or what are some commonly missed rules that we never think about in that sense? Obviously, I know handrails sometimes on. Yeah.
So USDA and FHA loans, they require a more in-depth, I guess you could say, inspection on our part. Okay. I say inspection, that gets confusing. Site visit, like our site visit looks a little different for an FHA and USDA versus a conventional. And I think a lot of times, it's about health and safety. They really focus on health and safety. So if I see a missing handrail, I have to report it. Yeah. It's now that the rules have changed a little bit, and I'm able to recommend whether I feel like that's a health and safety hazard, and then ultimately the underwriter will determine that. Okay. I'm trying to think. Attic space, we have to be able to see the attic space. A lot of times people will paint. I can't get up in that. We have to be able to do a head and shoulders inspection of the attic. Okay. Crawl space has to be clear, no water. Yeah.
I think you said something about being able to see all four corners.
Right. A lot of times that's not as big of a deal with investment properties. Sure. But a lot of times I go to these rural areas where they use that as storage, So, but we have to be able to see if there are any mechanical systems down there and stuff. We really need to be able to see that so we can report on it.
Because, a lot of times with most of us that we're doing single family homes or something like that. Right. Does that still apply in the residential kind of appraisal aspect, or is that usually kind of crossover more to commercial appraisers type of thing? If I have I'm going through a bank for a commercial loan. Right. Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Sorry. Do you ever work with the banks on sometimes for real estate that's potentially is going to be a commercial loan versus a typical?
No, I'm like strictly residential. Gotcha. And when it gets into
really
that,
they strict mortgages itself.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
That makes sense then. But that's still applicable in that, as far as what we're looking at a lot of times in that sense, or how we're gauging what we're going to be doing. So I just didn't know in that sense. So I'm obviously everyone's always got stories with real estate and so forth. So what are some of your stories as far as that you've got, as far as some of the craziest, weird, or notable things that you've seen come across either places you've had to go or whatnot? I think in your notes you said something about something road called Little Bloody Creek.
Oh, yes. So that's when I knew I needed someone to go with me, an assistant, I guess you could say.
You're like looking at the property, you're like, I'm going to need two of us for this one.
Right. Well, when I first started out, I had an appraiser one time, an older appraiser. He told me I was young and hungry, and that's why I would take on these assignments, and he was really right. Sure.
But there's truth to that, but you learn a lot through those, right?
I learned a lot, and it's a great fee, but it should have been because it was in Wolfe County, and I don't do much work there. They're record keeping, as you can imagine, when you get when you get in some of the rural counties, it's not up to date or easy to, read or get in general. But anyways, I went there by myself and it was a foreclosure, went out, no cell service. So I actually mapped my way there, but I couldn't map my way back once I got out there because I didn't have the service. But I kind of remembered, but I got out there. Little Bloody Creek was the name of the road. I should have known. I should have turned around then. But I get to this house. It's in the middle of nowhere, no electricity, right? Because it's foreclosure. Everything's been turned off. So I get there and I get in. I just knew I was in a horror movie. Like I knew it. There was nobody around me. It was kind of like a dreary day. And I had to go through this dark house. There were old creepy pictures on the walls. And I had to go to the basement. It was just terrifying.
Any neighbor, houses in sight? Or is it one of these rural things where there's...
No.
So we're talking about rural property, no houses in sight, no people in sight, foreclosed, no electricity, no cell service. And you've got to start walking around this house.
I'm walking around it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I knew for sure. I was like, something's about to happen. And then but that's when I knew. I was like, I don't go anywhere now that I don't get cell service. That's my new rule. After that, I really learned. But other than some instances like that, there was one time I was in Jackson, so I guess that's Breathitt County, and I had just seen a story that morning on the news about two brothers who had committed a crime. Actually, I think they had, I don't know, anyways. But one of them was on the loose. And so I was like, maybe I shouldn't go to Breathitt County when there's somebody roaming the hills on the loose. Maybe I shouldn't go there by myself. But here I go. And I'm talking to the homeowner as I'm leaving. I kid you not, I heard a gunshot. Yeah. And I almost dropped to the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh, here we are when this guy's found us. Anyways, it ended up just being, there was a gaming lodge close, and it ended up being okay. But I mean, yeah, I've learned that I need to not go anywhere without cell service. Need to take somebody with me.
Yep.
And you learn that along the way. But yeah, those are some of the wild stories. Other than just seeing some people's interesting decor, pets, all kinds of pets.
That's gotta be the worst one. As far as not knowing,
walking in, there's a big snake and like a tank.
Yeah.
And then outside, they're like, oh, these guinea are really friendly as they're like pecking
Everyone's
at me.
pets is always
they're pecking.
They're just friendly.
I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm not a country girl either.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I remember when I would start traveling a lot more. I mean, Lexington's much more of a central city area, even some of you start getting in Winchester, some areas, or Jessamine County, where an accent starts coming out more, that type of thing. But for the most part, I'm like, I'm raised in the city. You don't have an accent. I'm like, not everybody in Kentucky does have an accent to things. So I always tease my wife because she's from Campbellsville, and we'll go back to Campbellsville. And it's like as soon as we cross the county line, for some reason, it's like she just starts talking completely different, type of thing as far as that goes. And I'm like, who are you? Type of thing. One of the things we were noting on, you've been asked to do several retrospective appraisal reports, right?
Yeah.
You talk a little bit about what that is, and there's kind of some crossover between not my direct job. I'm not an appraiser in that sense, but talk a little bit about that and what that is.
Yeah, so I've had a few retrospective appraisal report assignments, and that really is for a home that's been damaged by fire, had one flooding, and what happens is they give me pictures. And then I interview the homeowners, and we kind of go over the finishes. We kind of, and of course, have PVA records to know.
And this is for adjusters in this case, or is it insurance?
Insurance,
carriers.
Right, and they need to know the value of the home before the natural disaster, the fire, the flood. So
when we say value, what value are we talking about? Are we talking about market value? Are we talking about replacement value in that sense?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Market value before.
Interesting.
Yeah. Market value before this incident. So I will use pictures and interview the homeowners, use the PVA, and we kind of formulate that. So my pictures are literally of land where a house used to be. Is
there certain scenarios where you find that is it every time that they're doing that, or is there certain times where they've kind of contacted you for that?
No, these are few and far between. You would maybe know.
I'm
interesting.
I'm kind of racking my brain because I'm trying to figure out necessarily why. Because in the insurance world, that gets a little bit convoluted in the sense that we're not trying to insure a property for its market value.
Right.
We're trying to, in essence, the idea is we're insuring it for what it's going to cost to fix it and replace it back to its original state, right? Which always gets weird with mortgage lenders or banks where they're like, we need this, maybe it's got like 10 acres and a small house that's only worth $100,000. They're buying it for like $300,000 because of the land, but we're like, the land's still there. I mean, the land's not going anywhere. It's still got its value. I was like, the house itself only costs $100,000. I can't make $100,000 house and insure it for $300,000, type of thing. So it always gets a little weird and convoluted in that sense. But I'm trying to rack my brain why market value would come into play in that sense. Unless, they could actually. Let me take that back. There could be sometimes the scenarios potentially. Maybe I'm thinking where that comes across where somebody doesn't want to rebuild. Where that could be.
I'm going to guess that's exactly what happened with these.
And that can be, just as an FYI, depending on the carrier and option out there, whether there's a penalty or not a penalty based upon the language in your contract, whether you can get the full, money recouped for that if you're not going to rebuild, versus sometimes if you choose not to rebuild, there's a penalty that you're not going to get that full, replacement or market type of value thing. So be careful on that just don't assume that you can just take the money and rebuild somewhere else, as an FYI to those out there.
I guess that's a good thing too, and investors to make sure that you always have pictures and keep a really good account of your updates that you've done.
Yeah.
Cost.
I'd always say the easiest thing is just to take a couple pictures throughout your house so you know what you've got, especially your personal property, because that's always the hardest part.
Absolutely.
Remembering what you had. And it adds up so fast. People have no idea how quickly. I mean, just your clothes can, if you look at your closet and start realizing if you had to replace your closet, it's probably way more than you probably ever anticipate that it is, type of thing, for example. Switching on to some personal stuff, any professional or personal goals that you're kind of working on currently?
Yeah, so I'm excited. Like I said, we started this in 2019. I'm excited to do some business development type projects in the future. We're working on our website, and we've really worked with our lender clients and word of mouth. Yeah. So I'm excited to explore some new ways that we can reach out to people who need appraisal services. It's not something we have to spend a ton of money on.
Yeah.
In this industry is the advertising, marketing, but just looking for ways that we can kind of get our name out there.
And to that point, I mean, any chance of probably dipping your own toe into the real estate investing side at some point?
I feel like that's in our future. I don't know. Maybe me and you need to talk more.
I'm sure there's probably a conflict of interest appraising your own. Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And really, it's funny because, like I said, I have some family in real estate. My dad is a realtor in Winchester, so obviously can't do any of his transactions where he's on the listing or selling side.
Interesting.
So I tell him, you're really hurting my business here. As his business increases, I'm not able to do his in Winchester, so we kind of tease each other about that. But conflict of interest there. I think that's our future. So when I met you and started listening to your podcast, this has been really educational for us.
Well, good. I mean, that's why I started it, because I didn't know anything, about real estate investing 9 months ago, type of thing. So outside of that, what was your first concert you attended?
I'm pretty sure, I really don't remember, but I'm almost positive it had to be the Backstreet Boys here at Rupp.
Like early 2000s?
Yeah, it had to be.
Middle school or teenager type of thing? Okay.
Right.
Hey, I don't think it's a bad one. I think my wife said her first one was, what was it? What's Genie in a Bottle? What's that one?
Christina Aguilera.
Yeah.
How cool.
And she's like, why did my parents take me to that? Now that I think of it, she's like, as an adult, she's like, what were they thinking? But no, I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't know.
Okay. What's one of your favorite trips that you all have taken or want to take?
So we actually took a trip last year with some friends to Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
We loved it. My husband played golf, and we explored, hiked. But I want to keep traveling out west.
Yeah, I had never traveled that west at all, actually, before we were married. Speaking of Scottsdale, did you go north at all to Sedona?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Beautiful.
Sedona is amazing. I love Sedona. You could just be like eating at a restaurant or sipping coffee, or like you don't even have to leave like your hotel type of thing or house that you're at, and it's just
beautiful. And yeah, I'm excited to get back out there.
One of your favorite date night restaurants? Where are you going?
We are going to Loma's at the Opera House in Winchester. This is a hidden gem. I know you have.
So I'm from Winchester. I lived in Winchester a little bit. So the Opera House, what?
So that's downtown.
Is that the old theater thing?
That's Leeds Theater.
Yeah.
No, this is different, but very close.
Where's the Opera House?
It is on the corner of Lexington Avenue and Main Street.
I would have to see the building. I would know the building. Maybe I just never realized there was an Opera House in there.
There's a family that's come in and redone it. It's gorgeous. Actually, that's where our wedding reception was, in the Opera House. And
so it's not an Opera House anymore.
It's not an Opera House anymore. It's an event space. The upstairs and then below, they've opened a restaurant. It is wonderful.
Really?
Anybody going through Winchester,
Lomas.
Visit Winchester for Lomas. It's worth it.
Okay. We'll have to do that. Last question. As far as Kentucky goes, somebody's moving here. Or people, obviously, you probably realize this too, especially Winchester. I feel like it's about to explode, I bet, in some respects, with growth maybe. But, I mean, what is your favorite parts about Kentucky if you were talking to somebody about that, growing up here, about it now, et cetera?
I think the landscapes. I mean, wow. We just have some of the most beautiful setting, the horse farms that you can drive, just the most beautiful drives.
Yeah.
Like we'll take Sunday afternoon drives through Winchester, Paris, Lexington.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous. And sometimes living here, we don't realize that. It takes people coming in to really stop and be like, look how beautiful this sunrise is over this horse farm. And you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? It is. I always
said it always took me traveling more as an adult to realize, oh wow, we have something special here that I just took for granted growing up.
Right. And then the gorge. I mean, now people are coming in to do the rock climbing at the gorge. There's just so many things that we take for granted living here that people are coming to Kentucky specifically for. So we have a lot to be proud of, I think.
Oh, I definitely agree. I think Winchester, like I said, it'll be something that's going to be neat to see how it grows and expands in the next decade.
Of course, I've lived there, grew up there. We have such a unique opportunity with our location.
Yeah.
Being so close to Lexington, and we offer, living in a small town, but close to everything that you would need in Lexington.
With the interstate access.
Interstate there, right? Yeah. Close to the Mountain Parkway. We have a big opportunity, I think, and that's why I get involved in Winchester, because I'm excited about all that we've got going on.
That's awesome. I definitely still need to get over to the Beer Cheese Festival.
Yes.
When is that each year?
It's usually in June.
Okay.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's newer, but wow.
Where's it at there?
They do it downtown.
Okay.
It's
like
wonderful.
On the Main Street type of thing area or something like that? Okay.
You get one pass and you can try all the beer cheeses.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Vote on your favorite.
That would be awesome. Yeah. They still have the Pioneer Festival at, it College Park?
Yeah. Yeah, they do it at College Park. They've actually been doing it downtown since COVID, which is nice for the businesses downtown, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they had to space out during COVID. So
I know the downtown's been reinvented and revitalized a lot since I lived there.
I'm telling you about the Lomas. Yeah. We now have a really nice coffee house, The Social, which is where...
is the Karen Coffee House still open?
So, no, that's where The Social is now.
Okay.
It's called The Social.
Okay, gotcha.
It's newer, but fun if you needed to meet a client or...
Yeah. My memories of College Park are this scar right here in my hand, actually.
Yeah. Hey, we have a new playground there, too.
Okay. So if anybody wanted to kind of get in touch with you or kind of maybe hire you for, independent appraisals or whatever, what's the best way to get a hold of you or in touch with you?
Yeah. So we're working on our website, www.martinappraisalgroup.com, but we have an avenue where you can request to chat with us about an appraisal. And, my phone number, 859-771-2242. It's our business line, and you can call or text. But, we do a lot beyond just for lenders. We do a lot of pre-listing appraisals. We do subject to. I know investors a lot of times will have us come say, like, here's what we're thinking about doing. What would that do for the value? We're happy to do that. Yeah. And we also do some, estate settling, divorce, those kind of things that you can also contact us. So
that's true. If you want to add on to your house, I hadn't thought about that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Alyshia, I appreciate your time today and coming on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. Make sure to subscribe and check us back next week for another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Thanks, Alyshia.
Thank you.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email Landry at novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.